Am I the idiot for avoiding my son when he wanted to spend time with me? I, 40F, love my son Avram, 21, but I did not want to be a mom and was denied an abortion. I love him so much, but I've never deserved him. I was a terrible mom. I know it was bad untreated depression, but it doesn't excuse anything. His dad and stepmom took him when he was 10, and they love him so much and made him the most amazing young man in the world, and I'm so grateful. After they took him, I got therapy treatment, and then spent time in inpatient for my drinking. Avram kept wanting to see me. His dad let me have weekends, and I tried to make the best of it and be a good mom this time. He'd always tell me I didn't need to apologize because I was sick, and he loved living with me. Since he turned 18, he spent more time with me, and I know I don't deserve it, and his stepmom does, but I don't do anything because it makes him happy. This past Friday, his stepmom was hosting a work dinner and wanted all her kids there, but Avram wanted to spend Friday with me cause we always do that. She's more his mom than me, so I knew he should be there for her. But he wouldn't listen and insisted on being with me, so I pretended I wasn't home that day and ghosted him so he'd go, and I saw what he did on his girlfriend's IG story. But you can see who sees stories, and she did and messaged me I was selfish for ghosting, and I really upset him. She essentially called me an idiot without saying it. He hasn't messaged me much since then either. I don't think I'm wrong. I'm trying to do what's best for him, and that's showing gratitude to the woman who deserves his love. But I thought to try for judgment here. Now for a few comments before the update. You're the idiot. Your kid is 21 and is well past the age where he can make his own decisions about which of his parents he wants to spend time with. You explained to him that he should really be with stepmom, and it would have been his decision to not do that and hang with you instead. If I were him, I'd feel so hurt by this. Comment 2. You're the idiot. This is gonna be harsh. Don't read if you can't take it. He is 21. He deserves to choose how and with whom he is spending his time with. You denying your presence when he needs it is just you doing the same thing you did before. Your excuses of, I don't deserve him, his stepmom should be his priority since she's like his real mom, etc. are just that, your excuses and your feelings, not his. Now is the time for you to make amends. Don't let your guilt deprive him of you even further. Apologize and tell him you feel like you don't deserve him, but you'll stop being a coward and will always be there for him from now on. Make amends the way he wants you to, not the way you think you should. That's the best way you can own up to your past and get forgiveness from both him and yourself. Now for the update. After my post, I realized how wrong I was and I called Avram, my son, and thankfully he picked up and came over. The first thing he did before I could even talk was give me such a big hug. It almost made me cry, but I held back my tears. I talked to him about his stepmother's event and why I felt he should go and why I felt I didn't deserve him. I told him about the things that I did when he lived with me as a kid and why I felt I didn't deserve his forgiveness. I guess what really shocked me was that Avram pointed out to me that he didn't see his time with me as bad and that he mostly had happy memories and all the bad times were just because I was sick and that wasn't my fault. And it's not things I forgot, I guess just things that I never valued and I guess never really considered. Small things like how I'd take him shopping to Zellers on Sundays and always let him buy a toy. How I'd always get a special message printed on his birthday cakes. How I'd always let him sleep hugging me even though he was 10 by the time his dad took. How I'd miss work to stay with him if he got sick. The big thing he told me that made cry is when he was 9, kids bullied him when they found out we're ethnically Jewish and made him cry so bad he left school before the Easter egg celebration, so I organized an Easter egg hunt just for him in the park. It wasn't just that. He told me so much more that I did that he valued that if I wrote it here I think I'd break the word limit. It's so hard to hold on to the happy memories when I think about how terrible I was and how much I yelled at him, or drank or smoked, but if he can do it then I can do it for him. And I've been trying. I've let him take full control of our relationship and I think it's been for the best. I've been seeing him much more often, and during Mother's Day, he and his girlfriend took me out to dinner and gave me so many boxes of chocolates. I've only been eating them when they come over so we can have them together. Even therapy has been going better since I convinced him to attend some sessions with me, and I think he's understanding what I went through when I got pregnant, but also how much respect I have for his stepmother. Plus, his girlfriend has started going to the gym with me. I love my son so much. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. He is everything that was ever good about me, and thankfully he got nothing that is bad with me. Maybe in another world where I didn't end up so damaged, I like to think I would have turned out just like him. He makes me so proud and so happy. I will try and never hurt him again and never be so selfish again. So thank you to everyone who convinced me to apologize, and to all the other mothers out there. Please hug your sons tonight if you can, no matter how old they are. Comment 1. I love updates like this. But someone's cutting onions at my desk and I'm going to catch some weird looks from coworkers soon. I'm so happy for you, OP. I know from experience that forgiving yourself is often way harder than forgiving everyone else, especially after struggles with addiction. But it is worth the fight to do so. I'm glad you're mending that relationship. Now I need a tissue. Comment 2. Depression is sneaky and it will whisper to you that you aren't good enough for the things in your life. I would suggest writing down the things that he tells you, or, if he'd like, let him make a journal of sorts of things he loves and appreciates about you. You can add to it as you find things to love about yourself. Then you can always reach for it when you're low to remind yourself that you're awesome. It's a trick that's helped me many times. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for returning a birthday gift I got from my boyfriend after he insulted me about my colorful past? This happened last night, but my phone is still blowing up. I, 26, dipped into my savings and got Mike, my boyfriend, 27, a PS5 for his birthday yesterday. He knew he was getting the PS5 because he told me that the PS5 is the only thing he wants. We've been together for 4 years, so the cost didn't matter. That is until I found out what he thinks about me. Some background. When I was 18, I was involved with Jake, a guy who I met online. We ended things after 3 months, and I moved on shortly after with Adam, a guy from work. I found out a couple months later that Jake and Adam were actually really close friends, but I didn't know Jake long enough to meet his friend group, so I had no idea. After finding out, I took some time off dating, and 2 years later, I met my current boyfriend Mike. I was upfront and honest with Mike about my past and the fact that I was unintentionally involved with friends. He said he understood and my past didn't bother him. Last night at his party, I showed up with the PS5 and he and his friends were screaming with joy. His best female friend Jessica laughed and said, "I wish I was a thought so I could afford a PS5 too." I looked at her with an "Excuse me?" look at my face, and she just said, "Never mind," and walked away. I confronted my boyfriend about it, and he said, and I quote, "She's just messing with you. You can't take a joke?" So I pushed further as to why this girl is even calling me names to begin with, and he said, "Well, everyone knows you were a thought before you met me." I asked him to explain how I was a thought before him, and he said, "You know, messing with best friends." He then patted me on the shoulder and said that it's okay because I'm not who I was back then, and if he could get over my colorful past and thought mentalities, to give me a chance, then I could get over Jessica's comments and give her another chance. I didn't say anything. I just got up, took the PS5 from the gift table and left. He was pissed. He literally called me like 20 times, but I didn't care. I was so hurt that I took the bow off and took it straight back to the store I got it from. They happily refunded it. I thought that was done, but Mike and all his friends, including Jessica, are berating me for being petty, and they're all saying I brought this on myself by making poor choices. I responded to Mike and told him that he deserves better than me, so find someone who wasn't a thought and get the PS5 from them because I returned it. He started screaming how I'm the biggest idiot for returning it and how I should be happy he ignored my colorful past. I'm thinking maybe taking it back went too far. Am I the idiot? There's no update for this one, so here's the comments. Not the idiot. Nothing about your past is even colorful. OMG, you dated 2 guys that happened to be friends. Good heavens, where are my pearls? I must clutch them. Sounds like Jessica is either sleeping with this fool or wants to be. She can have him. Use the money to get yourself something nice. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Who told you what you did was shameful? Who convinced you that having a consensual relationship and then, after that one had ended, having a different consensual relationship was bad? You casually dated 2 people at different times who knew each other. You didn't do anything wrong. Your boyfriend has a very toxic and unhealthy attitude about your dating history. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for calling my wife a hypocrite for making our son do chores when he's sick but not our daughter? My wife, 43, and I, 41, have 2 kids, a 16-year-old son from a previous relationship of mine and a 14-year-old daughter. My son has been living with us full-time since he was 4. To the current issue, my son has been suffering from cluster headaches for about 1 year now. They run in my family. He gets them every other month. Yesterday he got hit by one again while I was at work and my wife was home. When I got home in the afternoon, I found my son in the driveway carrying pots of plants inside, My wife loves everything that has to do with gardening and plants and regularly buys new ones, or rather attempting to. He was visibly in pain, pale, moving slowly, the typical watery eye, etc. When I asked him what he was doing, he told me my wife had told him to help her move those, but I didn't think he was in any condition to do so, and sent him inside and to bed. I got inside and confronted my wife with it, and she immediately got mad at me, saying it wasn't a big deal for him, and that she had him take one of his pills. They help but can only do so much. So I reminded her that she lets our daughter stay home from school for 2 days every month and frees her of any chores when she's on her period and is essentially being a biased hypocrite. We argued for a while and she said, "I'm undermining her authority." But I insisted on leaving our son alone for the day and carried the plants inside myself, which I'd done anyway had she just waited for me. Just to clarify, I don't interfere with my wife keeping our daughter home when she's not well. If she says that's necessary, then it's fine with me. I'm also not asking what is worse, but I don't think it was okay of her to make our son do this when he was in a lot of pain and basically grimacing with every movement. She also knows that he's not that great at standing up for himself. But am I the idiot for that argument? Now for a few comments before the update. Not the idiot, but your wife is. Seems to me like her daughter gets special treatment over your. Sony, no, both are your children. Either she is sexist and thinks women are inferior to men, since the daughter doesn't have to do any chores because of her period but your son has to do chores through cluster headaches. Or she has less respect for your son since she didn't give birth to him. Comment 2. Not the idiot, and I'm a person who gets a lot of pain during my period. I still don't skip school, but if your daughter needs to, that's fine. But forcing your son to work when he's having those headaches? I get migraines occasionally and I literally can't do anything for a while. Your wife is being awful to your son and a total hypocrite. Now for the update. Hey everyone, I've been asked for an update on this. I've talked to my son and wife about the issue and made a decision. Wife asked her how exactly the whole thing happened. Said she gave him a pill around noon when he started to feel bad, then went out for a while and only called up to him if he could help when she got back. She didn't see him, so she thought he was fine when he went out. I was shocked that she didn't check on him. She said she was sorry and wanted to apologize to him. Son, he's assured me that his stepmom hasn't made him work when he was sick before. This was the first time, and while I was glad about that, I dug a little deeper and asked him if he's ever felt less than his sister in the eyes of his stepmother. He admitted that he did start feeling this way as he became a teenager, not when he was a child though, but he never told me about it. Nothing bad happened, so he didn't think he should mention his feelings. I was very shocked about this. We talk a lot normally, and told him that he needs to tell me things like that even if they seem small in isolation. However, due to this dangerous lack of concern on my wife's side and my son's feelings, I decided we will spend some time at my brother's to figure everything out. Son is sad about it, but he understands my decision. He's too good of a kid to be mistreated in any way, and I don't want him to learn that it's okay to ignore your well-being for other people. I'm very proud of his kindness, but I don't want to see it being abused, especially by family. Thanks all. Edit. Since I get a lot of questions about this, we haven't moved out permanently. I only want to get some space between my wife and son. I've talked about this with my daughter, and she understands that there's issues between her mom and half-brother we need to solve and isn't sad about it. Comment 1. I'm glad you're standing up for your son, but did your wife take your daughter to the DR about her pain yet? It is not normal to have so much pain you cannot go to school while on your period. The sooner they find the cause, the less lifelong pain your daughter will have. This type of pain typically gets worse, not better, over time. If your wife won't take her, you should, even if it's for lady stuff. Quality of life matters for her. Comment 2. Maybe I'm missing something, but this seems like a drastic decision. Your son admitted that this has never happened before and he's only felt a little less than, which is normal for a lot of teenagers. I think discussing things with your wife and son would have been better than moving out. Also, what's happening with your daughter in this situation? You said in a comment that you're sure she misses you. Why didn't you bring her with you? Have you discussed this situation with her? Right now, she could be feeling unwanted because you're only worried about your son. Not saying that's true, since you didn't explain the whole story, but please don't ignore her in this situation because it affects her too. Then the poster responded with, I have discussed this with her. She understands that there's issues between her mom and half-brother right now we need to solve. She wants to stay in the home she's always had, which is fine too. We haven't moved out permanently. But I need to get some space between my wife and son for a while. She understands that, and I am okay with it. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to drop a like. It really helps the channel grow. See you next time. Am I the idiot for breaking my fiancé's family tradition by naming my son what I wanted? Myself, female 25, and my fiancé, male 27, have a 2-month-old son. We are overjoyed at being parents, but most of my in-laws are refusing to even see our baby because of a decision we made concerning his name. My in-laws have a tradition of giving the firstborn son of every generation the same name. Let's say it's Peter. This has been going on for about 7 generations already, and they're very serious about it. My fiancé's eldest cousin was the latest person to get named Peter. Every one of his cousins has only had daughters so far, so our baby is the first son of his generation, and consequently should get the name. I have no problem with the name Peter, and would have been okay with naming my son that. Unfortunately, that was also the name of my uncle, who died before I was born. I won't get into details, but it was tragic and traumatizing for my family. My father never got over losing his younger brother. My grandmother asked the family not to name any of our future children Peter during her lifetime. My mother-in-law and father-in-law knew about this promise, and at first seemed to not only be okay with us avoiding the name Peter, but also supportive of the one we chose. However, my grandmother sadly passed away when I was 7 months pregnant. We traveled for her funeral. On our last days there, my in-laws called to offer me their condolences. Then my mother-in-law asked me if I was willing to think about the name Peter now. Suddenly, they were insistent that the name we chose was awful and we had to honor their tradition. According to them, they had only agreed to make an exception for us for my grandmother's sake, and had no obligation to keep it now that she had passed. My family agrees that while it's true we don't have to avoid the name anymore, it still doesn't feel right to use it. My fiancé agrees with me as well, but his parents spent the last weeks of my pregnancy trying to convince us to change our minds about the name. When our baby was born and we named him what we wanted, my in-laws were furious that we had broken a 7-generation-old family tradition. Some of them hadn't previously wanted to name their sons Peter, but did it anyway for the family's sake. They said our decision was selfish, and that my family should have moved on by now. This has truly nothing to do with whether my family has moved on or not. It just felt like a betrayal to my grandmother and uncle's memories to even consider using the name. My father-in-law offered us $1,000 to change our son's name to Peter after he was born. That was 2 months ago, and neither of my fiancé's parents have met the baby or seen us since I was pregnant. Most of my in-laws are on their side, and this is causing a huge rift between my fiancé and his family. He assures me he's fine, but I'm starting to feel really guilty about this. Am I the idiot? Edit. The tradition started, as far as I know, when OG Peter died and his son, also named Peter, named his firstborn after his father. Peter III ended up having the first son of the following generation, and did the same thing. That one died before having children, so his sister gave the name to her son, and so on. The name, Peter, is very common in my country, so none of them ever got bullied over it, and the fact that it was also my uncle's name isn't as unlikely as one might think. Also, middle names aren't used in my country. Most people get the maternal surname before the paternal one instead. Edit 2, it wasn't $1,000. Different country, different currency. It's still a lot of money, but would probably translate to about $200 US. Now for a few comments before the update. Not the idiot. Family name traditions are weird and you can do whatever you want and name your baby whatever you want. Keep pushing the I'm honoring my late grandmother's final wishes hard so they see how unhinged they sound asking you to flout that. Comment 2, not the idiot. Just because they named their kids a name they didn't like to keep up a tradition, doesn't mean you have to. He is your son, you guys name him whatever you want. As an aside, once again, tradition is a euphemism for misogyny. Note only male children have a special name, and all the female children were not fought over. Presumably no one cared what they were called. All the more reason to end this now. Now for the update. A lot has happened since I posted, so I thought I'd give you an update. About a week after my post, my fiancé's parents contacted us. They apologized for their behavior, and begged to meet my son. They said they were ready to leave the naming debacle behind and truly wanted to be involved in their grandson's life. We were skeptical, but invited them over to meet the baby. The visit went well. They began coming over almost every day during the next 3 weeks. I noticed neither of them ever called my son by his name, but I didn't point it out. For the first time in months, things seemed good between my fiancé and his parents. One day, my fiancé was helping my file with something at our place, so my mother-in-law and I went to the park with my baby. Sometime later, I had to go to the bathroom, so I left him in the stroller with her. When I got back, she was sitting on a park bench, chatting with a woman who was cooing over my son. I went over there and introduced myself as son's name, mom, and she said, I thought his name was Peter. I didn't say a word, and neither did my mother-in-law. She followed me to the car and we went back to my apartment. On the way there, I texted my fiancé about what had happened. The moment we got there, he kicked both his parents out of our place. He'd read my texts and confronted his father. Thankfully, my father-in-law is a terrible liar and confessed immediately. Apparently, both my in-laws only call my son Peter. That includes whenever they're talking about him, every time they introduce him to someone else, and even baby talking to him on the few occasions they were left alone with him. Neither of them are embarrassed by this, and they both think they're in the right. We're heartbroken. Especially my fiancé. Not only because his parents can't let go of their pride, but also because the name we chose for our son means a lot to us both. I blame myself for encouraging my fiancé to allow them near our son. I was raised in a different city than all my grandparents, and always wished they could have been more involved in my life. Losing my grandmother didn't help. Pretty much every doubt I had only existed because I thought it would be important for my son to grow up with all of his grandparents around. But now, all my guilt is gone. If they can't respect my son enough to call him by his name, they don't deserve to be in his life. I hope they enjoyed the 3 weeks they had with their grandson, because that's all they're getting until they get their heads out of their asses. Comment 1. It's a sad situation and sorry about it, OP. You gave them a chance and they threw it away like chumps, and then you and your husband communicated and made an adult decision on something so difficult together. You two should be proud. I hope your grandson grows up proud of his parents and his name. Comment 2. Yikes. Are they this psychotic and unhinged about other things in life or just this one issue? The poster responded, according to my fiancé, they've always been a little entitled, but I never really saw them enough to be able to say that. I will say that, though they were polite, they very clearly didn't care about me until we moved in together. My mother-in-law pretended not to remember my name every time she saw me, and my father-in-law would lose interest in any conversations that weren't about him. Once it was clear me and my fiancé were in it for the long term, they started acting a lot more friendly towards me, but it never seemed sincere. Now, for the next story, am I the idiot for introducing my boyfriend's parents as Grandma and Grandpa to my son? This last Thursday I, female 29, went over to my boyfriend, Jay's, male 25, house for Thanksgiving and brought my son with me. I and Jay have been together for 1.5 years now, and he is the most amazing man in the world. He's been amazing with my son, his bio father is not in his life, and I can genuinely see him as the one. Jay's parents came over as well. It's not that I don't get along with them, it's just I have only ever seen them 3 times before this Thanksgiving. I have not had any time to really bond with them, I guess. They had never met my son in person either, but they both knew about him. By the time I arrived, Jay's parents were already there and helping him finish up dinner. We greeted each other, and Jay's dad asked, "And who's this little guy?" I introduced them to my son and then introduced Jay's parents as Grandma and Grandpa to my precious boy. I didn't notice at the time, but all 3 of them became quiet almost immediately. I ended up waiting in the living room alone for almost half an hour before dinner, and things just were incredibly awkward for the rest of the night. My son did end up calling his parents by Grandpa and Grandma, and I quickly noticed both of them would be very disingenuous and awkward about it over dinner, but they did not say anything to me about it. They didn't stick around for long after either, but when they left, both were very cold to me. I asked Jay what their deal was and he lost it at me. He claims I put him in an incredibly awkward position. His parents apparently didn't think we were that serious yet and began to question him if I was only using him as a replacement daddy. He said that it was way out of line to introduce them that way without even talking to him beforehand. I think it's ridiculous. If one day he's going to be my son's stepdad, then why go through this formal nonsense? He claimed that's not the point. And we ended up fighting till I stormed out. We have not talked since, and I have simply been waiting for an apology. I talked with my sister about it last night, and she said she was mortified to hear this, saying she also didn't get the read that we were all that serious, and she never felt like Jay intended to take on a dad role. This has got me questioning if I was wrong. Edit, okay, I messed up. I genuinely thought Jay would be okay with this. Jay has always treated my son so well. I guess I misread treating him kindly as being okay with being his father figure. I'm pretty sure I ruined this for myself, but most importantly I hurt my son through all this. Edit 2, I called Jay and apologized. We're going to be taking a break. I'm going to look into making sure I didn't scar my kid with this. Now for a few comments before the update. You're the idiot. That's a major leap to introduce them with those terms when they don't fulfill that role. And the fact that he may one day be stepdad doesn't mean he's dad unless you had a serious discussion about if he will take on that role. Comment 2. Are you really shocked that the parents of a 25-year-old aren't ready to be called grandma and grandpa yet? You're the idiot. You massively overstepped. It was not your place to introduce them at all, and especially not without asking if they were okay with that title. Now for the update. I thought I would update everyone on what happened. Immediately when I realized I was in the wrong, I called Jay and apologized for what happened. He told me he needed some space and wanted to take a break. I ended up calling his mother as well and apologized profusely. His mother forgave me, and after I explained my reasoning said she didn't hold it against me. However, in retrospect, I think she was only being nice to me knowing her son was going to end the relationship. Speaking of, Jay ended the relationship. I decided to take the advice given here about sitting down with Jay and getting on the same page about our relationship. I also saw some of the comments here about taking a break equals relationship ended. So I called Jay and told him that I wanted to talk sooner rather than later about this. We met yesterday, and while I feel our talk went well, it was really obvious to me that Jay was done with the relationship. He said that, while he always knew that me and my son were a package deal, he had not decided at that point if he was truly going to take on the dad role for my son. He felt like my interpreting his niceness and acceptance of my son as a fatherly role was a red flag for him overall, especially because we had never talked about it at all. He said that the real problem he had was me deciding that his parents were grandma and grandpa, without even talking to him about it. My original refusal to apologize and expecting him to as well were part of it as well. There are other things he brought up that I feel are beyond this issue anyway, so I'm going to leave them out. Many of the criticisms left on my original post lined up with what he said, so I can really say for certain I messed up big time. I apologized, but I knew there was really no hope of saving this, so I didn't push when he said he felt like we should end the relationship. Overall, my last post made me realize that I really need to work on my own expectations from my partner and how he will fit into my son's life. I also really need to work on my own communication skills. Comment 1. That post made me cringe so hard I turned inside out. Thanks for the update, OP. Glad a lesson was learned. Please don't set up your kid for disappointment again. Comment 2. Thank you for the update. I'm sorry this one didn't work out for you, but congratulations on doing the hard work and introspection you needed to do to own your part and why. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to drop a like. It really helps the channel grow. See you next time. Am I the idiot for telling my mother that my husband is not her replacement son? My parents have 2 kids, me, 26, female, and my brother Dan, I'm 34. Dan had a rough time growing up and frankly, my parents failed him. As a teenager he struggled with severe addiction and mental illness, and they did almost nothing to help him. By the time he was done with college, he had completely cut off my parents. To this day, Dan and my parents are still estranged. I, on the other hand, still speak to my brother regularly. My parents, especially my mom, take every chance they can get to mourn the loss of their son and act as though my brother wronged them by leaving. Dan has told me he wouldn't mind reconnecting with them, but only if they reach out and apologize first. I've encouraged my parents to do this, but they insist that he betrayed them. I got married early last year to my husband Jeff. We have a happy marriage, and he is adored by all my friends and family. But I feel like my parents have been crossing some boundaries. For example, whenever we've gone to visit them, they insist that he sleep in Dan's room, saying that their son, my husband, has come home and should sleep in his rightful bedroom. Before the pandemic, my dad would take Jeff out to sporting events and introduce him as his only son. Most of the pictures of my brother in my childhood home have been replaced by pictures of my parents with Jeff. The other day, my mom called to invite me and Jeff over for the holidays. I told her I wasn't comfortable traveling during a COVID spike. She was irritated but dropped it. Then she called Jeff and begged him to visit without me because apparently it's cruel for a mother to be without her child on Christmas. Jeff politely told her he wasn't going to visit without me. She's been emotionally blackmailing him ever since, sending him pictures of stockings with his, my mom's, and my dad's names on them and saying, "But we already promised so-and-so that our son will be in town." This felt ridiculous and unsettling, so I called her up yesterday and explained to her that she's violating our boundaries. Jeff is not her replacement son, and no matter how much she pretends she doesn't have an actual son, she does, and it is her responsibility to make up for the damage she did to that relationship before it's too late. She started crying and called me cruel for mentioning Dan, and said I have no idea what it's like to be a mother, and it's disgusting that I'm trying to deprive her of a son when she has already lost one by keeping Jeff away from her. My father agrees with my mother and Jeff agrees with me, though he doesn't like to rock the boat and thinks I should apologize anyway. I thought I did the right thing, but now I'm really not sure if I went too far. Am I the idiot? Edit. Thank you all for the support and advice. I appreciate it so much. I haven't been able to sleep, so I've been reading every comment. I don't know if I have the emotional energy to post in Just No Mother-in-Law yet, but I'm reading a lot of what's posted there, and already feel less alone. My tentative plan is to arrange for me and Jeff to get individual therapy and maybe couples therapy later on. We're going no contact with my parents for a while. I'm also planning to invite Dan to stay with us over the holidays. I have a lot to make up for and I want to spend as much time as I can with him and let him know he's loved. Edit 2. Also in response to the people pointing out the gross incestuous implications behind this. With the way my parents talk about me and my husband, most people who didn't know me growing up assume that I'm their daughter-in-law and Jeff is their son until one of us corrects them. Now for a few comments before the update. Not the idiot. And your parents sound very abusive emotionally. If you plan on having kids, set your boundaries well before you start that journey. Comment 2. Not the idiot. They are hurting and in denial. Instead of putting in the effort for Dan, they want to just snap your husband in like a puzzle piece. Can you recommend therapy for your patents and Dan to mediate? I know this puts your husband in a tough spot too. Now for the update. People have messaged me asking for an update. Well, I'm happy to share good news. My husband and I went no contact with my parents as many of you suggested. We have also both started going to therapy. We have only had 3 sessions each, but I can definitely say it has been a total relief to process things that I have been bottling up my entire life. I already feel like I can understand myself and the clusterfuck I grew up in significantly better. Kinda kicking myself for not trying it sooner. Jeff has felt the same way with his sessions from what he's told me. Under professional advice, we are holding off on couples therapy until we do a few more individual sessions, but we hope to start in the near future. Now for the main good news. My brother Dan is spending the holidays with us. After taking health precautions, he drove up last week and is staying with us past New Year's. Having Dan around has been incredibly special for me and Jeff. Dan and I have been making up for so much lost time, and I've never seen him smile so much, and it warms my heart. I did tell him about this situation with our parents and Jeff before he came. It was hard to hear, but Dan has a really strong support system and seems to be processing it in a healthy way. He's coming up on 7 years sober now. I was finally able to apologize to him for not stepping up as a better sister earlier in his life and enabling our parents' abuse. He said he doesn't blame me, but I still want to show him through my actions that I will always be there. My parents have been pretty much losing their poop this entire time, especially when they found out Dan is with us. As a people pleaser, I'm proud of myself for being firm and maintaining my boundaries. Right now my heart is filled with more love and joy than it has been in a long time. I know life won't always be like this, but my brother is safe and healthy and happy and knows he is loved, and that is everything to me. I am sincerely appreciating what I have. Anyway, happy holidays everyone. Thank you again for your help. Comment 1. I remember your post. You definitely did the right thing going no contact, and honestly you should stay no contact. They're never going to learn. Look at what your brothers went through for several years. Comment 2. I have toxic parents and going no contact was the best thing, hardest too, I've ever done. I am so proud of you. You are amazingly strong and I do hope you recognize this. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for interrupting my son's date so he could pick up his little sister? I'm a single father, male 43, to 2 children, Max, male 17, and Liza, 8F. I usually have Liza in after-school clubs so that I'm able to pick her up after work. However, last evening I was given some work that had me working overtime. I did try my best to negotiate out of it, but my manager told me that the assignment was to be completed by that night, so I just did. It was nearing 6 p.m., and I just knew I wouldn't be able to make it to Liza, so I called Max and asked him to pick her up. He responded by saying that he couldn't because he was on a date with his GF for their 6-month anniversary. I told him that I understood, but that I really needed him to get Liza and that I'd make it up to him for interrupting. He just angrily turned off the phone, and I thought that while he was mad he had just decided to pick her up. 30 minutes later I received a call from Liza's school about where I was because the school was close to closing down and no one was there. Luckily, one of Liza's friends' mother said they'd drop her off, and that was all good. However, I don't really like it when Liza goes with that particular friend, not because of the friend but because of the mother. She has this habit of asking math questions in the car that she knows Liza is unable to answer, and then criticizes her over it. It's all just very mean. I called Max and asked him where he was and that he was in big trouble when he got home. He just told me that he was busy and to leave him the hell alone. He came home at around 9 p.m. I told him he was grounded and that he was not allowed to use the car for a good 3 weeks. At that he got all mad and said that it wasn't his fault I was failing as a parent and unable to afford someone to collect Liza. Just want some insight on this situation. Was I being too harsh, and am I the idiot for interrupting his date? Edit. This is the 3rd time I've asked Max to pick up his sister in the span of a year and a half. Some people are asking why I don't have a nanny. Money is tight. Max and Liza's mother is not present in their lives, and no, I did not think of socializing myself with the parents at Liza's school. I am at work most times, so I haven't found time outside of the yearly parent meetings. Please refrain from insulting my son. Now for a few comments before the update. Okay, I'll take the bullet here, not the idiot. You're not failing as a parent. You had to work overtime, not out drinking or freaking off. Your son was in the wrong here for not helping, turning the phone off and calling you out for it. But you two need to talk this out and discuss expectations. If you expect him to be part of the contingency plan, there needs to be crystal clear on that. And what happens to car privies when he doesn't? Comment 2. Posts like this make me feel hopeless for us as a society, as a species. You'll get a lot of responses from people who haven't raised kids, many still are kids, and they haven't been taught responsibility and family. Asking your son to help in an unexpected situation is not, and should not be, a problem. Your son's response is entitled and gross, honestly. While being disappointed at the interruption would be fine, even appropriate, hanging up on you is disrespectful, and refusing to help is selfish and disgusting. Now, for the update. Hello all, thank you very much for the comments left on my post. I spent a good hour going through threads and seeing what everyone had to say. Reading the comments made me realize that I had been quite soft with Max's upbringing, which made him feel comfortable speaking to me the way he did that night. I also have to admit that I have spoiled him, handing him everything he asks for, probably because I don't want him to feel like he lacks all the things his peers have because he doesn't have his mother in his life. Not really the best reasoning. I had a discussion with Max about what happened a few days ago while Liza was away. He did try his best to have his grounding removed and car privileges back, but I stayed firm and that kind of shocked him. He's used to getting his way, but he understood he was in the wrong. Max did get quite emotional during the conversation and apologized for his behavior. That night and before, he knew that while he was too late to fix his past mistakes, he'd make sure not to repeat them. He even offered to pick Liza on days when he didn't have soccer training or plans. After many comments advising me to do so, I made an anonymous complaint to HR about my manager's tendency to bring up last-minute tasks. Apparently a few other people in my department have also had this happen, but were unafraid of saying anything in fear of losing their jobs. From what HR has emailed us, it's currently being dealt with. I was embarrassingly unable to say anything to Liza's friend's mother except for giving her a few dirty looks. While she wasn't looking, there were many comments questioning what I would do in the case this happened again, and right now it's Max. We've had a mutual agreement, and he's understood that he needs to also help out in the family. The situation isn't ideal, but we're making it work. Once again, thank you all very much for the comments/advice given. Comment 1. Was looking forward to an update on this situation. Glad to see you could come to some sort of agreement between you and your son. Don't be too hard on yourself about his behavior. You may have spoiled him, but it seems like he still knows when he's in the wrong and not. Wishing you and your family the best. You seem like a good dad who's just trying his best to raise his 2 kids to be good people. Comment 2. There is never a perfect situation. The lady was rude, completely out of character for you, then helped the mother out and grabbed the kid and figured it out. I'm glad you all figured it out. You always try to give your kids more than you ever have to make them happy. It backfires. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to drop a like. It really helps the channel grow. See you next time.